Line from Tallinn, Estonia. His name is Professor Michael Hitch, and he is with us online from Tallinn, where he is leading the Institute of Geology at Tallinn University. He is also a member of the executive board of EIT Raw Materials. And Michael, he will focus especially on mining education and the changes ahead. Welcome, Michael. We can't hear you, Michael. Could you check your microphone? It looks like it's muted. And we would like you to share yours. Thank you. Now we can hear your voice. Could you also share the presentation with us?
It should be shared.
Unfortunately, we can't see it right now. And I know you have a lot of good things to say.
Can you see it now?
No.
God, I hate technology.
Yeah, let's put it this way. We don't like technology when it doesn't work for us. Meanwhile, okay, here it is. Now we can see it.
Oh, okay, I'm burning my 10 minutes, and you know what?
No, it's okay. The floor is yours, Michael.
It's impossible for an academic to talk about anything, including describing their breakfast in 10 minutes. So what I'm going to try to do here, and again, perhaps my presentation should have been put in front of my colleague who just went, because really what I'm going to talk about is mining education kind of at the 30,000 foot level and perhaps a bit more at a theoretical level on some thoughts about things we have to consider. I think all of us in our university, those of us who went to university or college, have had those experiences where you've had the professor that sort of stands in front of either a PowerPoint or an overhead transparency or something, or a chalkboard even, and basically drones on. And I think those days, we talk about how we need to teach in the future. And yes, we've come up with fancier tools on delivery, but I'm not sure the actual pedagogy and how we get the information across has really changed. So I'm suggesting in this presentation some ideas on how that might work. First of all, we're all very aware of how our society has changed. It's become very interconnected. It's interesting that, global society today, about 55% or even greater now of the world's population is connected by the internet, as opposed to back in 95, less than 1%. And the way that we're looking at knowledge transfer is emerging at a remarkably quick rate. Again, it's not necessarily the toys and tools, but it's actually how we're learning and how we're taking some of this knowledge and experience on board. And I've kind of created these three words called education without borders. And I think that's really the reality that we're facing today. In the mineral sector, we're looking at different types of innovation and creativity in terms of how we're developing, moving information back and forth, and definitely taking steps beyond traditional methods. In mining, for example, and mineral processing, and really in other sectors as well, certainly in the manufacturing sector, that we've had this explosion of cheap sensor technology and fast, intranets and local area nets for communications. So we can move large sets of data and information and real-time data back and forth really, really quickly. And now with the advent of supercomputing and very high-powered computing available even at your desktop and arguably even in your hand, it allows us for lots of different opportunities for visualization and then ultimately simulation using these large sets of data. The next phase, I suppose, in terms of how our industry is going to move forward is, again, a lot more remote control, a lot more automation, a lot more mechatronics, and certainly robotics and autonomy. And we see this in other jurisdictions. For example, in Australia, we now have completely autonomous ore trains in Western Australia moving iron ore from the mines to the port. We now have autonomous haulage systems with trucks. And I know in Sweden, with one of the partners, Epiroc, they're moving towards more autonomous mining equipment. There are challenges, you know, and I'm kind of not so much a technocratic person, but I try to see things in a bit of a 360 degree way. But there is a cost of digitalization. There's a social cost. For example, we're redefining what social license is. We're redefining what that social contract is between the mining operator and the community. We're also looking at the change of work. Full-time jobs may not necessarily be the way of the future in our sector. We're certainly looking towards a more of a gig economy, as they refer to it. We also have to be mindful and more respectful of diversity, but also resilience and quality of life. Things are changing, and I think we've seen that over the last 6 months, perhaps, with our little friend that came to visit. But our life has changed, but yet life goes on, but just differently. But we also have to share what I refer to this value paradigm in the advance of technological innovation. For example, if a mine comes into your local community and is fully autonomous, what are the job opportunities? What is the value proposition to the community? So again, we have to be aware of this. Oops. We're also seeing mining operations changing. They're becoming very, very segmented. And we're seeing what's referred to as the MET sector, or the mining engineering, technology and supply sector, booming. These are subcontractors and contractors that are effectively running units of your mining operation. So ultimately, traditional mining companies basically just become super project managers. Diversity is an essential element of that social sustainability and social license component. And as technology advances, we have to continue, and particularly as we're dealing with young people, because we're all well aware that they're slightly different, we have to create engaging workplaces and places where people feel respected, valued, and connected. And again, to some extent, this is a bit of a change of a mindset at a mining site. In terms of diversity, and I look beyond gender in terms of diversity, but I look at diversity in the sense that you have a set of different ideas and different ways of looking at a problem. And it's a magical thing when you can get a group of people around a table, and we see this with hackathons and so forth, that we see the product of a remarkable amount of creativity. And this is something that we really need to be mindful of. And finally, the idea of attraction and retention of people that want to come into the mining or mineral sector. That, again, the days of, what were the 3 Ds? Dark, dirty, and dangerous, right? There still is a public perception. That's what mining does. And I know that we spend millions of euros and dollars on trying to reposition the narrative or portray mining as something that's technologically advanced, something that's ecologically mindful, and something that respects local communities. And this is something that we have to continue to push, and it's going to become even more imperative as technology becomes more prominent in our sectors. Industry, this is, these comments come from conversations with the big orange company in Australia. These are real things that industry feels, that academia has, and certainly mining education, is focused too much on management skills. And they've taken the eyes off the technical skills. And they see that this pipeline of technological knowledge is starting to become very broken and very segmented. And there's a need to kind of reinforce the technical basics. That being said, they're also looking for generalists. They're looking for people that are not necessarily just drill and blast engineers or mineral processors, but they're looking for people that can move from one station to another a little bit more seamlessly. The view of industry is that universities have sacrificed quality of education for quantity, bums in seats. And we are seeing that at the federal level in many jurisdictions, that the amount of funding going to universities is decreasing. So there's a greater reliance on commodifying education to some extent. Industry is also looking for more field work and exposure. They're looking for greater softer skills. Can you work in a team? Can you communicate? And this is particularly challenging with some of our newer, our younger people that are more dependent on communication devices, phones, etc., where some of those traditional communication skills and teamwork skills need to be developed. And also we need these tech solutions to be in harmony with zero harm workplace solutions. So there's a demand for, we need to stimulate the demand for mining programs and enrollment. We need to address the resource sector shortages. We need to encourage ways to cross-skill, reskill, upskill the workforce with a digital mindset. We need to look at research and innovation to be able to provide solutions. And also, we need to influence public policy and technology in the terms of future of work. So how do we teach this stuff? How do we take all of these ideas and put them into programming? First of all, we move to data-driven. We need to look at developing these higher analytical skills in our students. One way of doing that is working with real-world data that illustrates those core principles that we, the traditional professors, want to, the word is inculcate, or to sort of stuff into our students' minds. But we also need the real-world data to make that learning and those learning outcomes and learning objectives very real and tangible. We also need to take this idea of team-based learning to a completely new level, something called co-learning, where the students are learning from each other, as opposed to just working on projects in teams. And this is one of those things that kind of develops and fosters the diversity mindset. How do we deliver the courses? What is kind of my vision for delivery? Well, one of them is working in teams, but on, as I said, on real data sets. So here you've got an example on the, I guess it would be image left, would be you have groups of master's students that are working on a specific problem. So the professor is wandering back and forth between groups, basically acting as a mentor or acting as a guide. So no longer chalk and talk or standing there in front of a PowerPoint, which I'm about to do in about an hour. But here you've got an example of how you co-learn from people. And these students, in this case, are students that come from industry that are doing a master's program. So they bring all this interesting information. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you've got the AR Mining Sandbox, which is one of our projects here at Caltech, where we're using augmented reality to demonstrate geologic principles. And finally, Meyer Books, which is EIT. I would, because I'm involved, I would call it a flagship project, but certainly a very large augmented reality, VR or virtual reality concept where we're developing a virtual or a mixed reality textbook for mining and engineering education, where you would have a physical document, but you would have targets, which once you put on a device, whether a headset or use your mobile phone, you can deep dive into certain topics and take advantage of simulations, in-world experiences, etc. It's very cool. We need flexible learning environments. We need, we know that there's a demographic shift. We have lots more mature students. We have students with full-time jobs and families and lots of international. And we can just put COVID-19 in there just for grins, because again, we're shifting how we're delivering our material. Our students have different expectations. That there's an emphasis on job preparation, and they're more interested in self-directed experiences. And this is kind of an interesting point, and these are sort of the magic words about how we need to consider education, university education going forward, is pace. We need to develop flexibility in our teaching that encompasses accelerated or decelerated learning, basically on the basis of, of how the student is learning, whether the material is more difficult or more conceptual in nature, what have you. Place, location, where are we going to do it? In a classroom, in a home? Are you going to be sitting on a bus? Or are you going to be sitting in a mine site taking this course material? And finally, how we deliver it. Whether we deliver it fully online, blended, or something else using enhanced experiences. Big part of this thing, and this is kind of goes back, and I want to kind of tie it back to what's going on with EIT and EIT Raw Materials Academy. I cannot say enough about the Raw Materials Academy. I think it's a remarkable program, so rich, and I've never ever seen anything like it in my experience. That it's all about collaborative teaching and learning. It's about linking other universities and other entities together. For example, in the circle here, you've got Tallinn that works with Epiroc, with Budotech, with a Polish mining company, KGHM, European Goldfields, our friends in Finland, and with EIT itself. And what this does is it creates a very rich, multi-dimensional, very diverse learning opportunity for our students. At the top, you have what's becoming more common, particularly in Europe, is the collaborative learning agreements. And this is an agreement that we're in the process of working on between ourselves, with our friends in Leoben, and with TU Freiburg. So what we're seeing here is that we're looking at much greater linking of resources, linking of talents, and linking of experiences going forward. So what we need to do is to extend the university's reach, not only into society at large, but also into industry. And there's always been this kind of suspicion between the two groups of industry and universities. We have to focus on lifelong learning. And again, we heard about this just in the presentation before mine. It's all about cross-skilling, upskilling, and reskilling. Things are changing, and things are changing fast, and we have to be prepared to learn and unlearn very, very quickly. And we need to teach the capacity to do this to our students. For example, developing certificates in mining studies programming, where we'll take people that are not necessarily technical, but teach them about natural resource development and mining and mineral processing, and give them some micro-credentialing opportunities. And again, developing corporate learning products. So that would be a great example for EIT, is they could develop certificates and individual corporate learning opportunities for member organizations. I think that's about my 10 minutes, probably more, but I want to thank you very much for your attention and your patience.
Thank you very much, Michael. This was a very interesting presentation, and I will ask you to stay put online, because we have questions for you and also for Riina. But